This video is sponsored by Jerry's Artorama. Jerry's Artorama Online has been serving artists for over 50 years, providing only the best quality art supplies. Jerry's Artorama has premier lines that sell all over the world and are used by millions of artists and professionals worldwide for amazing results. In addition to over 65,000 fine art supplies, choose from over 4,000 free art lessons, oil painting, drawing, acrylics, watercolors, mixed media, and the largest selection of new supplies professionally evaluated and created by artists for artists. Jerry's Artorama has been empowering artists since 1968. We provide reliability, better art supplies, great prices, and exceptional service. The quality of your art matters to us.
Hello, everybody. Today we are showing featured entries from the May Art Dare, and we are also announcing the July Art Dare. If you would like to grow as an artist and you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof: critiques, tutorials, and professional development. The May Art Dare was to create an artwork using home art supplies. Anything from balsamic vinegar to hair dye was eligible for this art dare. And we're starting with Manette Eaton. She says, I really like masks, the idea of putting one on to take on a different persona. I used a Cheerio box as the base. I have an old dictionary that I never used anymore. I had some rocks I found on a local beach, a ribbon for a pop of color. The mask is meant to resemble a bird. I really wanted to play with texture and layering. Well, Kat, there's a lot of supplies in this one mask. What do you think?
I think that this art dare is really interesting in that it can use materials and make them like you can transform them in some kind of way or form. But what I find intriguing about Manette's submission is that this artwork also takes into account the materials usability. So I kind of like understand ribbons and paper and rocks and etc. But I think that Manette took those into mind and then created an artwork. So I don't think that they look very different. I think that Manette really capitalized on the materiality of the things that she chose.
And Manette explains, I don't think I ever would have made this if it weren't for Art Prof. I like that these dares make me think outside the box and try something new. Yeah, I think that what's brilliant about this piece is the structure that she created of the mask, and then the way the paper mache just adds this richness and texture that is so beautiful. And even the ribbons, which are fairly simple, those are pretty important to this piece.
Hmm. Yeah, and I also just like the little added details. So I think Manette could have like stopped at just the mask and the ribbons, but the rocks really add another little layer because who would have expected that on a mask? I certainly would not have.
Well, and the rocks are not interfering with our appreciation of the textures and the ribbons, but they definitely add another dimension that I don't think you expect to see on a mask. I mean, rocks are not that typical to begin with, but I love how they echo what's happening with the holes that are in the eyes. I think that is really brilliant. Sentient Charcoal says, I love how you left the mask unpainted, Manette. Dara says, love how sculptural this is. And Ginger says, I love the ribbons. They are definitely my favorite part. All right, our next artist is Neil Espinoza, who, by the way, is live with us here in the chat. And Neil explains that this first one was heavily inspired by Professor Lieu's Mezzotint prints. And Neil also says the second one is a more personal portrait. Let's go to that one. And I wanted to portray my secretive personality by cropping and obscuring most of the face through shadows. Neil used shoe polish on acetate, applied it with a tissue paper, an old brush, and scraped away highlights using a cutter. Well, we got two pieces to look at here, Kat. What do you think about Neil's use of shoe polish?
I'm shocked. Shoe polish? I was looking at these pieces and wondering what materials were used here because I know that Neil has been an art prof for several years now. And so I know that Neil already has art supplies at home. So I thought, oh, maybe it's already like a black paint that Neil already has. But no, it is shoe polish. And I think that really goes to show that anything goes for art making. You wouldn't expect shoe polish to be made for painting or a print, I guess. I'm not quite sure what to call this. Would you consider this a painting or a drawing, Clara?
Why are you asking me? Who knows? It's something.
Yeah. But I mean, shoe polish could be an art making medium. And I think it is very transformative in the way that Neil has used it on acetate. I wonder if anybody else has just acetate lying around at home or if that's more of an artist material to have.
And it's brilliant to look at the close-ups and the range of subtlety in the gradients, so many cross-hatched lines that are crossing over each other. And this is one of those pieces where it's not obvious it's a home art supply. If you told me, oh yeah, Neil painted this with black acrylic, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I get it. And that's a really different use of the home art supplies. We're going to look at a lot of examples where it's very clear cut what the object is. And Neil, I think you really hid the fact that it's shoe polish. I mean, it really just feels like a full-blown piece. And Kat, I just love the layering between the rubbing of the shoe polish and then the cross hatching. Isn't that a brilliant combination?
Yeah, I agree. I'm also glad that Neil included close-ups, or at least gave us an image that was high quality enough to look at it this up close. Because one of the true treasures of this piece is the way that Neil kind of hid what material he used through the use of the medium, through additive ways, like adding paint or adding the polish to the acetate and scraping away. So subtractive methods of dealing with this medium. So additive and subtractive. And you can really see that through these close-ups.
Neil, I think it's a very sculptural drawing because you wouldn't think that shoe polish has that much range to it. But I think there's something about the way you rubbed it into the surface of the acetate that works very well. I mean, I feel like I could grab that chin. It's just popping right out of the page. And as Carolyn says, so very expressive. And Jasper's asking, is it oily or waxy, the shoe polish? Neil is explaining, Jasper, it's more waxy. And some wonderful, encouraging comments from people. Leslie says the texture is just beautiful. Karen says, Neil, this is fabulous. RG, Dennis says, this is so cool. I love that people show up here to support each other and that it's not just me, 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 me. That's what I love about our community, is that everybody is encouraging everyone else. All right, the next artist we have is Susan Kashmiri. She says, I was inspired to create my art piece after watching several gophers stealing vegetables from my garden. Chose to depict a hairless guinea pig so I could use makeup for skin tone, eyebrow pencil for eyes, and blush to give the little guy some color. Susan goes further and says, I use cooking oil to help smooth the makeup, a little bit of pesto sauce for highlighting the greens in his mouth, food coloring for the background, and craft paper used for the bowl. What do you think, Kat?
Whoa, it's kind of funny to think about, but I think Susan went to every room in her home to find a different material from each room because it really feels like that, like oil, makeup, crafting paper, salad. It's just like the most random assortment of materials that managed to come together to make this piece.
And I really like that Susan provided these work in progress images because you really start to see the process and reasoning behind things. Plus, I just have a soft spot for hairless guinea pigs. I just think they're so ugly. Like there's this one guinea pig, hairless one, at the Petco near us, and it's always there. Nobody's buying it.
Oh,
And I
maybe
think
that's a
it's 'cause it's
sign that Clara, you should adopt that one.
oh God, we already have 4. I don't think I can
Mm,
handle it.
that's fair.
And Kat, isn't this such a great studio shot?
Yeah, it even includes a Tupperware of salad. If I hadn't known better, I thought, oh, that is the artist's lunch. Dangerous to put food with art materials. But little did I know it is an art material.
AA says, all the different mediums collaged together. I love it. It feels like a page out of a picture book. Yeah, it's so playful, the
Mhm.
way that everything has been assembled. I mean, even the way all the vegetables are arranged, that little ribbon of carrot that's going over everything else. And it's not easy to combine a 2D image with 3D elements. I think oftentimes it looks a little strange because they sort of conflict, but I love this combination.
Right. I agree. I think also that people forget that photography can be illustration or photography can inform other areas of art, such as what Susan is doing here, mixing the 3D with the 2D. Reminds me of those I Spy photos where the photography itself makes up pretty much the entire illustrations, all the illustrations in the book.
Brittany says, so cute. I'm enjoying the Beatrix Potter vibes and creativity in how you source your materials. And we have another point, which I think is pretty important, which is that these are not archival, points out Jade. But you know something, Susan, if you ever wanted to do illustration, all that matters is the digital image. And so,
Mhm.
while yes, this is not exactly going into the Metropolitan Museum, I would feel very bad for the curators who'd have to figure out how to conserve that. I think this is a great way to do illustration because, Kat, not a lot of people do 3D elements in illustration.
Right, it is more rare. People think illustration should be 2D, illustration should be drawing, but no, illustration essentially is you have an image that can be reproduced. So in newspapers or books, etc. And this is an image that can be reproduced. So long as you have that digital image, that's all that matters.
All right, the next artist we have is Carolyn Smith. She says, I've been thinking about playing with mosaics for some time. This was a great opportunity to try it on a small scale. Carolyn explains, I use neutral pH PVA glue diluted with water to glue the pieces down. This piece used about 2 eggs worth of shell and took about 12 hours to make. What's your take on this, Kat? We have the shells by themselves on the left, and we have the mosaic on the right.
Oh, wow. This is truly a moment where we see a material as transformed. Because if we just looked at the right, I would have never guessed that those are eggshells. But then now that I am told and I know, I see the left image and I realize they are eggshells, it kind of makes me see and appreciate eggshells in a totally different light. Like, this is beautiful. Eggshells can be beautiful. And I also really, as a side note, I would have really liked to see the behind the scenes. Like, did Carolyn just randomly smash eggshells and find pieces? Or did Carolyn specifically get a shell and like specifically break off little pieces to fit in different areas? I would have loved to have known that as well.
Well, Carolyn is live with us here in the chat, so happy to have you. Maybe, Carolyn, you can illuminate us a little bit about what your process was like, because this is so immaculate. The way every little piece, I mean, it's so lovingly applied. And there's so many different shapes. And one of the things that I think, Carolyn, you did so well is that there are so many different sizes. There's little tiny itty pieces, there's the bigger ones, but then the bigger ones come together to make another shape. And then the negative space in the middle is brilliant.
Mhm. I noticed in the up close images that we do see little marks of some sort of white crayon or a white pencil. And I think that's a really good idea to be able to plan your shape beforehand.
Carolyn's explaining it was really hard to control the shape, so I mostly broke them and hunted up pieces. I would never have the patience to do something like this. I mean, creating a mosaic is really hard, but on this scale, I mean, it's almost like you're doing surgery. It's so precise to have to put everything together like that. And
Mhm.
I think it's a really beautifully designed piece. I mean, if we go back to here, isn't it wonderful how the various parts of the jellyfish they interweave with each other?
Yeah, and not just that, there are such different textures going on. We have the very structural bulbous top, and then we have these weird feather boa tentacles, and then the little whisker tentacles. And that just goes to show Carolyn's level of patience. I think that making art is always a push and pull between whatever, just don't think and do it. And then another aspect of I got to be very careful and I have to be a little bit detailed and I do have to think about it. So alternating between these two stages is really difficult. Some people get stuck at one stage or the other and they don't think it's hard to mix the two. And I think Carolyn has really mixed the two in that eggshells are random. You don't know how they're going to break. You're going to get what you have. And then curating that into more detailed, more thought out forms.
Jasper says, love the fragility with the rigidity of the boards. That's such a great point because, you know, something, I don't think this would look very good if it was on a black sheet of paper. I don't think structurally it would be strong enough to support all the glue and all the various pieces. And so that choice to have that specific surface, I think is really smart.
Mhm.
Sentient says the delicacy of the eggshell pieces somehow works wonderfully for the delicacy of a jellyfish in the sea, even though the texture is so opposite of a jellyfish's. Bill Loren says, I like the form shadows of the shells on the left. And Seven Angelic, another great point, a jellyfish is something so soft, made of something so brittle. And Carolyn says, I did it over many days, half an hour or so at a time. I mean, yeah, I bet your eyes hurt after constructing something like this. So amazing job, Carolyn. Okay, next artist we're looking at is Janet Hebert. And Janet says, I wanted to make a whole piece using only nail polish. However, with their small brushes and odor, it was a bit unwieldy. I found leftover coloring, conditioner from my wild hair early in the pandemic. Conditioner's thick consistency was perfect for using abstract techniques to give texture. I experimented with fork scratching and cling wrap scrunching to make the
Mm.
background. And the result makes me think of space, the sun, and planets swirling around. What do you think, Kat?
Wow, I would have never thought to use nail polish in an artwork until you say it. And then I say, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. It's just pigment. You could use it in art. And what I love the most about this piece, Janet, is that you really experimented. Experimentation here is, I think, the star of the show in terms of using the different materials and then scraping away, adding stuff, using, what was it, saran wrap or tinfoil to create that texture, I assume, on the bottom. And yeah, you're using a new material for these pieces, so you might as well go all the way and experiment new ways you can apply this material to the canvas.
Well, I really like how people are sometimes just using the material, and a whole bunch of people took materials and mushed them together. Like we saw Susan with the salad mixed, what was it, pesto and oil.
And
Janet
makeup.
is
Mhm.
adding hair conditioner and then the pressing of the cling wrap to create the textures. And so, what I like, Janet, that you did is that you didn't just stop with that one material. You added things to it because you troubleshooted that, oh, the nail polish wasn't giving me what I wanted, so I'm going to alter it as a substance. And troubleshooting such an important part of the process when you really don't know what's working.
Mm. I think that it kind of reminds me of drawing in plein air, where you just add things as you see them and you really can't control the process whatsoever because you've never done it before. Like, this is a completely new situation. You got to do what the cards with the cards you got to make do with the cards you have been dealt with. And I think what's cool also about Janet's piece is that, yes, Janet has to make do with the cards, but Janet keeps adding cards. Like, what do I do with saran wrap? What if I add hair conditioner? The nail polish smells bad. I don't want to work with it anymore. Totally valid.
Sarah makes a great point. I like the idea of using what one already has, things from daily life, transforming them in a way that is hard to recognize the raw original material. Yay to brilliant recycling. The art store is an extremely limited place. I probably shop more at the hardware store than I do at the art store. And it just shows you that you don't have to follow the traditional route when it comes to art supplies. I mean, yeah, I love going to Blick and feeling up the printmaking paper, but the nail polish behaves in such a different way. And there's something to be said about using supplies that are unfamiliar.
I think what's also cool about this art there is that, oops, I'm frozen.
I'm still there.
Oh, am I? Okay, I don't know. So
No,
wait. Okay. I'm like, am I frozen? What is cool about this art there is that sometimes you don't need a concept in the beginning. Sometimes the concept is just, let's have fun with these materials. And then you can add a concept to it later. So later Janet said, I think it looks like planets and stars in a galaxy. I'm like, yeah, I totally see it. But you would have never known you would have ended up with that in the very beginning.
Janet is here live with us in the chat. Welcome. And Janet explains the black was actually Liquitex string gel, and it was really hard to control. Oh, but I think that's one of the best parts of it, is that it does have a mind of its own and it is meandering throughout this space. So I think that's fantastic that in that case, you gave up control and really let the material do whatever it felt like doing. And that's not always the easiest thing to do as an artist. Next artist we're going to look at is Anna Karina Winter, and she explains, I decided to work with water and ice. The first photos are showing a little landscape made of frozen flowers and tissues. And the process was melting down one of the icy flower bowls. So actually we do have some videos that are on Anna's Instagram, and you can see this is not just the bowl. There's a whole process to how this artwork lived. And Anna says, I let it float in a tank and took pictures during the day while it slowly dissolved. I love the thought that depending on whether the water is in a flowing condition or frozen one, it can carry and transform things or can take them to a state of entire stillness and conservation. Let's go through all the images because there is so much here to process. We have first this image, which is a close-up of the frozen surface. This is an aerial view of the bowl, which has the frozen flowers. We saw the video. This is a close-up. And here's a side view of the bowl. And here's a further view from the frozen water. What do you think, Kat?
Whoa, this is a very cumulative piece. I think that we see Anna Karina add another dimension to artwork, which we didn't see before, which is time. Seeing materials transform over time and documenting that process. And wow, I think this is so, what is the word? Sophisticated. I think this is extremely sophisticated, an extremely sophisticated series of works with very mundane objects like tissue paper, flowers, and water/ice, really playing with the elements and capitalizing on the materiality of these elements, of these materials. And just thinking about it in terms of a series, it doesn't have to just be one series, one piece, and focusing on that. You can create many pieces from this artwork over time as well. And I just think it's extremely sophisticated in general.
I feel like we're watching a world go through a prehistoric age and the ice. I don't know. It's really primal in a way, but the thing is, the images are so ethereal and delicate. And of course, the piece is about the object and that transformational process. But I'll tell you, Kat, the photos are gorgeous on
Yeah,
their own. And so this piece has many forms that it takes.
right. I think that Anna also has quite a skill with photography because not only did she document such mundane materials in such a transformative way, but she's also omitted certain materials from being
Yeah.
shown in the photograph. Like we don't always see the container in which the flowers and the water and the ice dwell in. Additionally, when we do see the container sometimes, it's covered in this tissue cloth. And it would have been so easy to just omit something and not think about it. But I think Anna has really thought about the entire composition of these images and photographed them in accordance to the vision probably that she has or the observation that she made in the moment.
AA says there's such a mystical feel to these ice and flower pieces. Carolyn points out the first one looks like an electron micrograph. Well, what I like about this image is the scale's super ambiguous. I would believe it if you told me this was a universe, but it also feels like something that you could see under a microscope. And so I just think the way the piece changes its personality, depending on our perception of it, is really incredible. Yeah, Seven Angelic says mesmerizing. Karen says dreamlike. Neil says looks so ethereal and otherworldly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's take a look at Mary's work. Mary says, I often pick up things that I find while walking my dog in the city. I have these objects lying around my workspace, so it's interesting to use them to make some pieces and photograph them. They feel very expressive to me. I didn't realize this, Kat, but I think that's actually a fairly common activity. When people go on walks, they notice things and pick them up. I don't know if that's something you do, but I definitely have come home with a random assortment of flowers and rocks.
And that's really funny that you just go out and you think, I'm just going to walk my dog, and you come back with a little treasure trove
Yeah.
of stuff you find on your walk. I think that's really magical in a way that to see a mundane object lying somewhere and then appreciating that object and bringing it home with you, kind of like as part of your collection. It really goes to show that one man's treasure is another man's, one man's treasure is another man's treasure, is vice versa. But anything can be transformed into art, including these objects of curiosity that you find on your walks. And I think that's really beautiful and touching.
And there is a whole world of artists who work only with found objects. I feel like that world is not as visible as, say, people that paint or draw. And so every time I see that, I think I really consider, okay, what was the artist thinking when they found that object? And what spurred them to pick that object out of the other things that they could have picked up? And I think you're right, Kat, that it really is a treasure hunt. And you really start to see the artist's eye in the objects that they choose. Like I'm noticing in Mary's, there's a lot of leaves, but all the leaves are really different from each other. What else do you notice about Mary's curatorial approach to found objects?
I've noticed that they're repeat objects, like that glittery flower I've seen previously in like the strange mosaic image that we first saw. And I think it also shows that Mary likes certain pieces. I mean, when you have a collection, you can't when it's significant enough, it's really hard to appreciate every single piece at the same degree. You're going to have some favorites, you're going to have some lesser favorites. And I think it's really interesting to see this in Mary's artwork series.
Brittany says, these are tiny narratives of the places you've been formed through your perspective. Seven Angelic says, walk treasures arranged together. I love that. And Carolyn points out, They have a level of story and meaning attached to where you got them, as well as what you make. Lovely. And Jasper says the mixture of both organic and non-organic junk is not as easy as it looks to pull it off. Well done. Yeah, a lot of people, I think, sometimes think found objects. You just arrange stuff. I'm like, no. Even this, okay, which is not as, say, patterned as the way the petals are layered on top of each other. There's something about the arrangement here. I mean, it's not quite a museum exhibition. It's not really a scientific butterflies and pins. It's really unusual the way it's laid out in such a formal manner.
Yeah, I think what people pick up on when they see this is that there is intention in where things are put. And when they think about that, I think another aspect is somebody touched this. Somebody very specific put these things in this certain form. And so you really see Mary in these pieces. And I think that's what's most exciting about artwork is when I see the artist in the artwork and I can really pinpoint they definitely did that. They touched this piece. I know it, a very certain person in this world exists that made this. And I love that specificity.
You've got some prizes to give out. The honorable mention goes to Carolyn Smith. We were so blown away by your craftsmanship, the care and consideration that went into making this piece. And it's a huge technical feat to invest that many hours, 12 hours, into making this piece. And we all have lives to live, and somehow you fit this in, Carolyn. So incredible job. And we also have a prize winner, which is Anna Karina Winter for the piece with the frozen flowers and tissue paper. We thought this was amazing. I mean, it transcended so many expectations that you would have for a prompt like this. And we just think you did an incredible job, Anna Karina. Let's talk about the July Art Dare, which is to redo an old artwork. Now, to be clear, this is not take an old artwork and work on it more. You have to totally start from scratch, but you're redoing an old piece. Now, I have never done this before, and so I'm really intrigued about what the process might be like. But Kat, you redid an entire comic. Tell us what we're looking at here. This is the old version.
Back in 2016 in art school on a super, super short deadline, I created this comic called Changeling. And the prompt was you have to take some mythological creature that transforms in some way or form. And I don't know why, but my brain just locked in on a changeling. And not changelings don't transform in all myths, but I found a very specific myth where it did. So I applied it to my comic. But in the end, I didn't have enough time to draw it as well as I did. I knew it was a good story, but unfortunately with my deadline, I just submitted a really rushed drawing. And I always regretted that, but there was nothing I could do in the moment. So later on, I took this comic, I recycled it. I took the same story, but I redrew it entirely with the care and attention I felt like it truly deserved.
Well, we certainly can see the difference. I mean, you chose an entirely different pen technique because in the first version on the left, it's largely line. And on the right, you did stippling. Why that choice to change the pen technique?
So what's interesting is that visuals can change the way a story is told. And when you read this comic, there is one really magical moment that I wanted to highlight no matter what, because that was the point of, I guess that was the peak in the story for me, where I stippled one of the panels in the story. And I didn't want that stippling to just go kind of unnoticed. So I used that same stippling technique for the cover, which is the very first thing you see when you open up this comic.
And here is the old version, the scene where this baby is crying. I know a lot about that. And then we have the version here. And what's so much fun for me is to see what changed, but also what you retained. So in this case, the point of view is exactly the same. it's an aerial view of the adult and the child. And the most noticeable change, I think, is the music, because in the old version, the music is these little notes that are all over the place. But in the new version, there is a very focused flow. And so what I find in the first one is the music is very fragmented. But then on the one on the right, one of my favorite parts, Kat, is the music that's on top of the adult's hair. And that, I think, provides interaction that the first one didn't have before.
All right. Thank you for noticing that. You hit the nail on the head there. I think something that a professor told me really resonated with me when creating this comic later. Like, this is a thing about redoing an artwork. You are armed with more tools and skills than you were before. And so you can really see your piece transform on another level. But anyways, what this professor said was you can really tell the skill level of an artist based on how they treat the details. All the main elements, such as the mother, the child, these obviously should be well drawn, but the notes should also be well drawn too. Even if they are details, they're still necessary to the image. And so when I first did this comic, I really was not paying attention to the notes because I just had to get that done. But when I came back to it, I said, I have to really focus and make sure every part of this piece gets the same level of attention.
Sentient asks, do you recommend using the same medium or redo it? Or can it be, say, a drawing transformed into a sculpture? Sure. I've had pieces that I've done where I've thought, oh, why did I use charcoal? This really would have been better as a print. And so how different it is up to you. I mean, there are sure lots of differences here, Kat, but let's say you took the aerial view, maybe you have the same scene, but you have eye level instead. So what you choose to change is up to you. Just know that it has to be clear that you are redoing the same concept. I mean, you can't have this image and then have a picture of a guinea pig. I mean, that doesn't work. It has to have the same spirit of the original artwork, the same intent for it. As long as you have that, I mean, we're not going to hold anybody to some really specific level of change. I mean, it's totally up to you. What am I going to do? Lower your grade? So do whatever you think is most appropriate. Kat, how many years were in between the two versions?
I read this in 2020, so 4 years. 4 years between these two versions.
And would you say your pen technique changed within those 4 years?
Oh, absolutely. I think actually my peers from art school, they saw the transformed version of Changeling and they said, wow, it really seemed like you were very steady through art school because you just stuck with pen and ink. But there are subtle changes in the way you've been using this medium over the years that we couldn't even see because we were so up close with you the past few years. But seeing this comparison really puts into perspective how much I've changed and evolved with this one medium.
Anna is asking, how old does it have to be? It could be a piece you did yesterday and you didn't like it. I'm going to do it again. So it's totally up to you, because I think that's also interesting. A piece that is so recent, what are you going to change? In which case you don't have 4 years of progress with your pen technique. So I think it's fascinating to consider, well, why am I picking that artwork? What is it that I wasn't satisfied by that is making me want to redo it? Because Kat, this one I think is actually the most dramatic transformation out of all of them. And it's really in the baby. I mean, I think the baby here, it's not as human-like as it is in this page. I mean, this one, the baby's so round and it's got those mushy little hands. And in this one, it's more angled. It doesn't feel as plump as the baby in the second one. And also, I'm noticing the use of big black shapes, like the baby head in the lower left, the baby hair. Now, in the first one, you don't really use black shapes. Why did that change from the early one to the new one?
I guess my mindset changed from when I first did it, because when I first created comics, I didn't think that spot black would be as useful as it was. But later on, as I did more comics, I realized, wow, having those spot blacks help guide the eye through the composition in the page really helps elevate the storytelling. And the fact that the baby changed is also not a coincidence. When I first, babies are hard to draw. They are so
They
hard.
are.
So when I first drew this on a deadline, I thought, okay, I just got to make a cartoon baby. It just has to be baby-like. It doesn't have to be an actual baby. But when I drew it again, I really wanted to get the specificity of a child because first of all, it's really hard to draw and I wanted to see if I could do it. And second of all, it's informative to the work that it has to feel a bit real. It has to feel believable.
Katie's asking, can you take a drawing, turn it into a painting? Yes, you can absolutely change so many things about the way you do this. I mean, maybe Kat decides that you don't want to have planets inside the eye. Maybe you want to have a ball of fire. I mean, it's like however you want to do it, but Kat would have to stay with the same story. It can't turn into the adventures of Pook and Yo-Yo the guinea pigs. That's not the same thing. All right, everybody. Let's talk about some of the logistics. If you want to do the Art Dare Leap, we invite you to do 4 artworks. Art Dare Leap is totally not required. It's just some people like to have that extra nudge to do a little bit more work within the set time period. And we would love for you to hang out with us in the Discord. We do have a channel that is just for the Art Dares. And it's so great for people to watch the development because you can also get suggestions from each other as you're working. And the people that are posting in there are having a blast. They're getting support, they're getting feedback. Get in there, hang out with us. To officially enter the Art Dare, you need to tag us on Instagram with hashtag ArtProfDare. And we also have a page on our website that lays out all the information for the Art Dare. And if you don't have social media, we do have a Google form that you can use on the website to submit your work. I hope you will join Kat and I in the Discord right after the stream. We will be in the post-live stream stage channel, and that's an opportunity for you to talk to us on voice. We love hearing the voices from the community. It is just so much fun. So we hope you will all be there in a little bit. And by the way, a big thank you to Amanda for the super chat. We so appreciate that support. And we have another one here from Sentient Charcoal. You all make a huge difference in us making sure we stay free and accessible. There are many ways you can support ArtProf. You can make a one-time donation on PayPal. You can buy some of our original artwork on Etsy. You can buy an artist call. Oftentimes, the help you need has to be customized to your specific concerns as an artist. There's only so much sometimes you can get from watching a video. A lot of people have purchased artist calls to get more customized advice. And a big thank you to our top Patreon supporters. I'm so happy we have a new supporter this week, Aikechi Atako. Thank you for joining our top supporters. And I'm also happy that we went up $43. Yay! That makes me so happy, everybody. Thank you for supporting us. And remember, when you join Patreon, you get perks. You get to hang out with us in the Discord and the Patreon channels. You get way more attention from the staff, exclusive content, email newsletters, all kinds of fun stuff. ArtProf has a podcast, is available on Spotify and also on iTunes. And subscribe to our channel for more art tutorials, critiques, and business tips. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.